Here I am for my first little traveling vlog. I've been in the house way too long and I felt like I needed to get out for a while. So I'm deciding to go on a short little trip out in the middle of nowhere. Not too far away from where I live, but it's an interesting place that I thought maybe I would like to share. I still haven't used this particular setup for something in my games, but there's got to be something there. I guess my temptation is that maybe it needs to be something for a modern game, something that high school age kids maybe would go out and get involved in, something supernatural would happen, but you'll see what I'm talking about here coming up. So I'm facing a dilemma right now, and that is that my camera is sliding away. Okay, so I am at the Robb Cemetery, and I've discovered something really kind of cool, something that I haven't experienced before at all, and that is that they have opened up the side of the building so that you can actually get inside. They used to have an iron grate over the front so you couldn't get in, and now they've taken it down, or somebody has, and maybe this isn't intentional, but I'm totally going to exploit this, so here we go. Okay, here I go. I've never looked inside this place before. Wow, it's dark. Wow. Looks like things are starting to perhaps fall apart a little bit, which is not good. So what I've always been told is that this was a place set up by somebody who lost a daughter at a fairly young age and wanted to do something to commemorate her life. And they built this, I believe it was supposed to be a place where you could come up and have church services or places where they could have the funeral service. And over time, hooligans and kids came up here and kept using it as a place to party and get into mischief, and so they sealed it all up. And they kept it that way for quite a long time. I don't know what prompted them. I think surely the people who are curious, the sheer amount of people being curious about what's inside here probably led them to open it up so people could look, because to a certain extent it's kind of disappointing because there aren't any dead bodies or anything like that in here, unless you want to say like a bird or a spider or something. But obviously this is great for sparking the imagination. It's got a very interesting sort of architecture for a place like this in this area. Okay, I'm going to crawl out of here so we can go check out the cemetery, which is just across the road. Unsectarian, I guess that means that any kind of sect can come in here and use it, right? Like maybe the sect of a cult? Okay, so here I am at the back end of the building, and I can see that there's a chimney up there. So I didn't see anything that looked like there was a fireplace in there, but maybe there was at some point during this thing's life. Okay, so this is the view back behind the building. And I don't think that landscape has changed much over the last 150 years. What do you think? Uh-oh, somebody's coming, I'm in trouble. Yeah, there are some people here that are here for normal purposes to visit the graveyard, so I may have to cut this thing short. We'll see what I can come up with. Well, I found the story here. They have it here in this map area. I don't know if you'll be able to hear me, but I'll talk anyway. I can maybe use it. It's pretty windy out here. But Wilhelmina Robb was the name of the girl. She was 15 years old when she died, and she died on the operating table. And guess what she was having done? She was simply having her tonsils removed. So yeah, that's pretty tragic. So my obvious thought process is that if you were to set an adventure in this area, that I think that if people started messing around over in the big crypt area, that all these folks would probably get angry and pull themselves up out of the grave and come over to take care of the problem. That's just me. You know, oddly enough, it's these sort of simple graves with just names on them that give me better ideas than the ones with elaborate inscriptions. Well, I'm afraid that's all there is of really great interest, so hopefully that inspired some ideas for you. Okay, so here I am back at home base, and I thought I'd sit down and record some of my thoughts, talk about some of the things that have been happening in my gaming life lately. So I have about 3 subjects that I could talk about. I need to talk about Deadlands, because that's new. I want to talk about a game called Dark Trails that I've recently picked up a PDF for it. And then I also need to talk about the adventure that I'm writing based on the trip I just had that you just saw. So I guess I'll talk first about the Robb Cemetery and the adventure idea I have coming up. So I've already started working on it. I have a map drawn, and of course, going out there and looking the things over again, I got a lot of ideas. The adventure I'm going to make, I think, is going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to be a fairly simple adventure, the kind of thing that you would use with beginners, beginning level characters, or people that have just started playing role-playing games. So I think what I want to do, I want to keep the notion that the big chapel was built for a girl that died at a fairly young age, but I think I'm going to kind of put a twist on it. And obviously I'm going to change the names to protect the innocent here. But I think I'm going to have a girl that maybe got into supernatural things like spiritualism, and got hooked up with a particularly evil gentleman from back east. And he manipulated her and somehow convinced her to, I'm thinking, commit suicide, or to let them kill her so that she could be returned as some sort of powerful entity in their mixed up evil religion. And they keep her in this chapel, and the evil guy has kind of built up a small cult following. I think largely what I want to do is have the local populace under some sort of mind control where they don't even remember what they do, but like in the middle of the night, they're summoned forth and they all sort of sleepwalk out to this old chapel and have the evil cult master needs them to participate in a big ritual where there needs to be like a congregation of people, and they participate without even knowing it, and then they return home the next morning and know that something has happened while they were sleeping, but really have no recollection, no memory. And I think that's how I'm going to draw the heroes into the adventure. It is perhaps maybe like the local country doctor. He's got all these complaints about sleepwalking or poor sleep, and he can't figure it out because it's happening to all of his patients, which are in a sort of a small geographical area. So When I do, I will get that thing written up and I will play test it. I'll probably try to do that somehow online, and if all goes well, I will publish that. I do have Weird West Adventures available. This is the part where I got to shill things, sorry. It's on DriveThru RPG, and the company is called Games What Games. And right now I have I think a series of about 5 standalone adventures. I think I'll ask a couple bucks for them. And they're essentially one-shot adventures, good for one session, roughly 3 to 4 hours of game time. And they're over when they're over. You can just sort of wrap them up. The players can feel like they've accomplished something, and that's it. So if you're interested, if this idea gets developed and turns into something that I can use, I will definitely let you know, and I will put it up for sale. So I apologize for the bouncing up and down on the camera in that first part. I can take care of it now. I understand it's happening. So, okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is a new role-playing game, at least new for me. It's not actually fully out or published in book form yet. It's called Dark Trails, and it is another Weird West role-playing game, obviously. And I've purchased the initial, I guess it would be the starter set for the game. It gives you most of the rules, how to build characters, and gives you a beginning adventure to try out. It is published by a company called Stiff Whiskers Press and written by someone named David Beatty. I'm unfamiliar with this company. I'm thinking it probably is something new for the sake of the game. Not sure if they have a history of publishing things or not, but this game is based on the Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG, which has been popular for quite a while now. It is a sort of an old school take on classic Dungeons and Dragons. And it looks like they've sort of taken that sort of system and transferred it over to a world, a weird Western world. I've read it over, not thoroughly or completely, but I guess when I talk about games like this, I'm going to try to balance what I say with good things and some bad things. So after looking it over, I really feel like it has some potential. I'm not sure if I'm going to let it sort of take over the slot in my gaming life that Deadlands has, but we'll see. It has a lot of very fun mechanics in my mind. There is, it also uses a deck of cards, which I think is fun. Whenever a character uses a firearm, you also draw a card off of your deck, and each player has their own individual deck. And it kind of creates for potential things to happen, both good and bad. There are a lot of little mechanics like that I think are fun, and when I talk about Deadlands, I will talk about those little sort of mechanics, those sort of gameplay things that I really like, a little bit more detail. But so now I suppose I should talk about something negative about the game. Reading through it, I found I don't feel like it really sort of has a good solid grounding in history to build from. I mean, we all know we're talking about supernatural things and things that are just never going to happen, but you know, some of the beginning professions that a character might have seem more like something drawn from the 21st century as opposed to something from like the 19th century, those kinds of things. You know, I like the classes. They all seem to sort of have a supernatural element to them, which is okay, I guess. But some of the things just don't. They seem kind of pushed or stretches, like a luchador. I happen to really appreciate Mexican wrestling personally, but a luchador in the Wild West, I kind of having a hard time getting from A to B there on that one. But if people are having fun, that's fine. I'm just letting you know what I don't like about it personally. So. Okay, so the last thing I need to talk about is Deadlands, and why this is a subject is the Kickstarter ended a while ago, and as part of one of the perks of backing the program, you get a copy of the rulebook right away. You can download it as a PDF. And so I've gotten that, and I've had a chance to look it over. Of course, I was excited. And as I stated before, I will say some good things and some bad things about the new Deadlands. So, um, Deadlands is to me the classic sort of standard by which Weird West role playing games should be compared to. It's the one that sort of started it all. Probably technically isn't, but in my mind it is. It was created by Shane Hensley and it's published by the Pinnacle Entertainment Group. I've talked about it before. Now, I got through it and I started reading through it, and I have to say that I was a bit underwhelmed. Maybe it's because my expectations were a little high, which is possible. I really did not find a lot there to get excited about, and I think that's largely because it's not a new game for me. The book is there to introduce a whole new generation of players to the role-playing game. And so, me reading through it, none of the stuff seemed fresh or new. It was sort of the same old character archetypes, the same sort of storylines. I mean, obviously they did change I guess, the backstory of the entire thing, the history, the alternative history that is there for Deadlands, bumping it up, a few years into the future. But yes, there wasn't a whole lot that's new there for me personally, and it doesn't mean I'm going to not play Deadlands. I still will. I was just perhaps maybe as hoping that there would be something a little bit more new and exciting. There were some new monsters and that kind of thing. Now, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I kind of have always enjoyed some of the fun, gamey elements to Deadlands. In particular, you have the dice, like most role-playing games have, but you've also got the cards, and you've got the poker chips, and the poker chips are gone. Now, there was a mechanic in the two previous editions where you utilize a poker chip element to the game where you would draw them, and they would be your bennies, and they would help you out. And you could draw more as the game progressed if you did good things and you were rewarded. And there were three types: white, red, and blue. Well, these are gone now as a core rule. Now, obviously, there's nothing stopping people from just playing with that system anyway, but I was a little disappointed in that. So essentially, apart from the fact that you use the cards for initiative and combat, and then there is the option for hucksters to use a deck of cards to get more magical powers. That's about it. You're still just rolling dice and playing pretend, essentially. And I miss sort of those sort of elements. I wish that there was something more for the rest of the players, the players that aren't the hucksters, the magic using people, to utilize the card deck in some way. I don't know what that is, but just telling you what I was sort of disappointed in. Positive things, yes. I really appreciate the way that they have cleaned up the blessed characters. The blessed are the holy clerics, the people who draw their powers from a religious source. And there were several versions in the course of our playing Deadlands that the way that their magic worked, and they've sort of fixed upon a very solid system now, and I really appreciate that. That was really badly needed. So I suppose that's all I have time to talk about Deadlands and my other role-playing games today, so I'm sure I'll talk about them more in the future. Okay, so in each one of these episodes, I am going to have a segment toward the end, which I haven't had come up with a name for yet, but it's essentially going to be a segment in which I'm going to invite you, the viewer, to help me and my wife sort of create a good, solid backstory for some of our miniatures. So my wife and I have a fairly extensive collection of 28 millimeter painted up miniatures. Most of them are unpainted too, but and my wife has a lot more than I do. She has her own personal collection, which is probably 5 times bigger than mine. And she has some very wonderfully painted miniatures. We bring them out on occasion But hers are more for show, whereas mine are more for being used at the table. Now, what we want to do is that we would like to show you one of the miniatures. It's been painted up, and we want your help developing the name of the character and the background of the character that miniature would represent if it were being used in a role-playing game. So she's got some pretty interesting little, and by characters I mean the idea behind the miniature. I mean what it is, what it's doing, and it'll become more clear as we do this. But so I guess I will start with the very first miniature. So this is our first ever candidate for our fleshing out the miniature sort of contest that we're going to have. So this guy was manufactured by Games Foundry, which is a company out of the UK. It's been around for a long time. And he is part of what they have as a group called the Shanghai Pierce's Cowhands set. So he's a cowboy for sure. But so take a look at him. I'm going to go ahead and turn him around so you can see what it looks like from the back. Maybe that'll inspire something as well. But what we want you to do is to come up with his name and some character background. Obviously, he likes guns and alcohol, which is pretty much what the West is about. So anything more would be great. So go ahead and put what you think or what you would like to see down in the comments.